Eastern Time. This is Unit 6. My name is Lynn Simons, and I'm a state district court judge in Washoe County, Nevada. I'm so excited to be here with you all, and I'm going to tell you right now, take a very deep breath.
Hi, my name is Murray Snow. I'm the Chief Judge for the Federal District Court in Arizona.
Good morning. My name is Tammy Waller, and I am the Director for K-12 Social Studies and World and Native Languages at the Arizona Department of Education.
All right, and will you please introduce yourselves?
Hello, judges. We are Unit 6, and we will be discussing the challenges the American constitutional democracy faces in the 21st century. We'd like to thank you all for being here today. We'd also like to thank our coaches, Amy Alpern and Tomika Du, our student mentor, Kayla Hung, and our teacher, Sadie Adams. My name is Simone.
Hello, my name is Mariah.
Hi, my name is Ming.
Hello, I'm Maya.
Hi, my name is Gabby.
And my name is Carson. Thank you. We are now ready for your questions.
All right. As you said, Unit 6, what challenges might face American constitutional democracy in the 21st century? Question 2, President Dwight D. Eisenhower said, "We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence by the military-industrial complex. The potential for the disastrous rise of misplaced power exists and will persist. Do you agree or disagree, and why? Please discuss what disagreements did the founders have about a standing army, and are they relevant today? Also, to what extent should there be an international U.S. military presence?" You may begin.
Eisenhower's presidency oversaw a sustained period of peacetime military expansion. He maintained occupation forces in Korea after the war and authorized an arms race with the Soviets. There is no doubt that Eisenhower understood the importance of military readiness, yet he repeatedly called for cuts to defense spending.
His main concerns included an excessive military budget that sacrificed other federal investments, private defense contracting during times of peace, and the cozy network between military and profit-minded defense firms. We believe that Eisenhower was right to be concerned regarding the, quote, disastrous rise of misplaced power, end quote, of the military-industrial complex, a power not governed by policy or budgetary restrictions, but by lobbyists and politicians' self-interest.
For example, prior to becoming Vice President, Dick Cheney was CEO of Halliburton Company, a private defense contractor hired to carry out many services in the Iraq War. Only alert citizenry can recognize the conflicts of interest. Companies that wage war for profit or power without consultation and against the best interests of society are a threat to democracy.
Today, Eisenhower's concerns remain unaddressed. The federal government continues to spend a hefty sum on defense during times of peace rather than on chronically underfunded issues. For example, the F-35 Joint Strike Fighter program cost $1.6 trillion over its lifetime. While the manufacturer Lockheed Martin benefits from this project, schools are underfunded by $150 billion annually.
Article 1, Section 8 of the Constitution gives Congress the power to raise and support armies, a drastic change from the Articles of Confederation. The Army Clause sparked fierce debate amongst the founders about standing armies, a permanent army of paid soldiers versus militias, an emergency civilian military force.
The federal government's authority over a standing army was not infallible, yet Federalist 8 and 46 argued that it was in the best interest of the U.S. Federalist 25 imparts that without a standing army, the U.S. would, quote, receive the blow before we could even prepare to return it, end quote.
The Anti-Federalists did not support the Army Clause due to the possibility for wide interpretation, as argued in letters to the Republican. Anti-Federalist 25 asserted that a standing army could endanger the liberty of the people because the military could be employed by the government for self-interested purposes and restrict state and individual rights.
As the military functions differently today, the founders may have issues with the size and cost, which has expanded from a force to ensure protection to one that secures resources and spreads democracy. Military spending is a controversial issue. Many see the military as misguided and harmful, while others see it as an integral part of American safety.
Niccolo Machiavelli argued that preparing or being at war is a constant political reality, yet our founders took a position of semi-isolationism, described by Jefferson as, quote, peace, commerce, and honest friendship with all nations, entangling alliances with none, end quote. Today, the United States is deeply entangled with foreign nations, with over 500 international military bases.
The 234,000 troops stationed across Asia and Europe do not provide for the common defense outlined in the Constitution's preamble. Some argue this presence is unnecessary, with the advancement of technology could support dictatorships and cause civilian harm, which denigrate our values of promoting justice and ensuring tranquility.
That the US has intervened in many countries to establish democracy and protect human rights. The departure of the US could cause countries like Afghanistan to be overrun. Furthermore, overseas bases can dissuade other countries from annexing nearby nations. Relations with allies and maintaining our position as a global superpower will contribute to our common defense.
The US could reduce excessive military presence by only retaining bases essential to NATO relations. However, diplomacy should remain a priority of foreign policy to promote peace and freedom. As Eisenhower stated, quote, "It is the task of statesmanship to mold, to balance, and to integrate these and other forces, ever aiming toward the supreme goals of free society," end quote. Thank you. We are now ready for your questions.
Thank you. You discussed in your testimony international presence using the Spratly Islands in the South China Sea. Please discuss what are the positive and or negative aspects of a US military presence?
As China lays claim to many of the islands in the sea nearby it, a US military presence on these islands could help to protect these islands from being taken over or claimed by China, with the native populations being forced out. However, if the United States were to send troops to areas this close to China, it could potentially worsen relations with another global superpower.
Our presence have helped smaller nations such as Brunei, Vietnam, and Malaysia protect their rights to islands and fishing grounds, because our military presence asserts navigational rights and freedom. Additionally, we are helping our allies such as Japan and South Korea's trades not being interfered by China's control, as China is trying to illegally claim these territories.
However, some may argue that we should take a more isolationist standpoint with our military and international relations and focus on our own chronically underfunded issues in our country, such as education, healthcare, and climate change.
Thank you. Why did the framers ensure civilian control of the military? And is that sufficient to prevent the abuse of military power?
In Article 1, Section 8, Clause 12, the Constitution gives Congress the power to raise and support armies, but no appropriation of money to that use shall be for a term longer than 2 years. Additionally, in the same section and article, in Clause 13, it gives Congress the power to maintain and provide for a Navy. So that section gives Congress, and the framers set it up, so that Congress has the power to support a military.
In addition, Article 1, Section 8, Clause 11 gives Congress the power to declare war. However, a minority argues that the president can still initiate uses of force without Congress's formal proclamation. For example, we can see this when President Truman initiated forces in Korea.
Article 2, Section 2, Clause 1 of the Constitution names President Commander-in-Chief of the Armed Forces to place a separation of powers in the military, as is done in the general government. However, as my colleague Simone mentioned, there are times when this power is usurped by one of the forces. Another example is when President Nixon bombed Cambodia without Congress's approval. These abuses of power are sometimes contested in court, such as Campbell v. Clinton of 2000, in which the DC Court of Appeals ruled that Congress could not sue former President Bill Clinton for violating the War Powers Resolution in regards to Yugoslavia.
In the United States v. Curtiss-Wright Export 1936 case, the court declared that the president has plenary and exclusive power over negotiations with foreign countries.
In your prepared testimony, one of the things you talk about is Anti-Federalist Paper 25 and the idea that a standing army might be a threat to state and individual rights. My question is, under what circumstances, if any, should the National Guard be deployed domestically?
We can see how the National Guard was deployed in many protests over the summer for Black Lives Matter, specifically in our city of Portland. However, the McDonald v. City of Chicago case of 2010 gives individuals the rights to use arms for self-defense, which provides as a check on standing armies impacting liberty.
An example of military in the United States not being used for law enforcement actions is with 16 separate states' National Guards being used to help roll out COVID-19 vaccines.
Thank you. What is your position on whether the government should require all citizens to register for selective service?
We can see some governments do this, such as the Israeli government having required national service for their citizens. Many contradict this idea, and it causes a lot of conflict in Israel. However, we can see the benefits that it provides. As my colleague Carson was mentioning, the Israeli government has been extremely beneficial in providing vaccines, and they have used their government to do this with the required national service citizens.
Additionally, Plato advocated that citizens are social creatures with obligations to each other and to their community. We could see how requiring military service would contribute to the common good, civic virtue, and nationalism amongst citizens in order to cultivate human excellence.
However, one could argue that this violates the 13th Amendment prohibition against involuntary servitude. However, Thomas Jefferson would have liked this idea, as he said, every citizen should be a soldier. This was the case for the Greeks and Romans, and must be that of every free state.
In addition, however, the U.S. Declaration of Independence provides that we set out to follow the ideals of life, liberty, and happiness, echoing Locke's ideals of natural rights and life, liberty, and property. Many individuals in America have a heavy emphasis on individual liberty and probably not feel that this is within their individual liberty to contribute to that classical Republican idea of civic virtue.
Should Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps programs recruit students in high schools? Why or why not?
I'm sorry, could you please repeat the question?
Certainly. Should Junior Reserve Officer Training Corps programs recruit students in high schools? Why or why not?
Recruiting students in high schools allows certain students to pursue careers that they may not think to otherwise. However, this also allows students with less than favorable grades to do something that is more relevant to furthering their work life.
On the other hand, recruiting high school students often appeals to lower income, less privileged students who may not have access to college or career options otherwise. This can exploit citizens who do not have as much choice or opportunity in what they want to do, and could recruit citizens using their ignorance to job opportunities as a way to get them to join the military, even if that is not what they may have chosen on their own.
In addition, recruiting students can teach them the valuable lesson of civic virtue through civic education, which is currently being proposed for our state of Oregon to require civic education in all schools.
And we use the military to influence our foreign policy. What other tools besides military are available to influence foreign policy, and how successful are they?
We can see how diplomatic relations serve a crucial purpose in overseas. For example, Biden has issued a statement saying he will remove forces from Afghanistan by September 11th. However, he will continue diplomatic relations to stabilize their government.
Thank you.
Well done. Thank you. That was very well done. I really enjoyed all of you, and it's very difficult to navigate a large group, and I thought you did it really well. There was only a couple times where you spoke over each other, but it was, I think, product of Zoom and not necessarily in person. But I also thought that you complemented each other really well, and no one got lost in the mix. You took a position, you had so much evidence of different types. You had a great pace. The one thing, if I were to offer some constructive criticism, is to remember that it's not just troops and placing troops. For instance, in my You could go anyway with my example of the Spratly Islands, but really it's whether or not we continue to send naval presence there. But you identified the fishing, you identified some of the economic concerns. So I thought that you did a great job, and I could have sat here all day talking with you. So congratulations.
I too enjoyed the presentation very much. One of the things that I liked is your citation of the Anti-Federalist as well as the Federalist Papers. I mean, the Anti-Federalists were founders too, and they very much influenced the constitutional text. And so I thought it was really good that you gave us some Anti-Federalist information. And the Dick Cheney conflict of interest, I thought, was a really nice illustration of the military-industrial complex and how there's sort of a revolving gate that goes back between government and private sector. And I thought that was nice. Your examples were well thought out, and you cited often back to constitutional texts. The one thing that I would say, and I don't offer this really by way of criticism, I don't know what else to tell you, but in response to my question, what I really was looking for was a discussion of what kind of a threat was it when President Trump, after he was not reelected, seemed to suggest that the military would support him in remaining in office. It would have required more of a conversational tone. You were too well prepared, and so you just zinged me with all the constitutional text answers, and all of that was really good. So I don't have a criticism about that. But you might also give a little bit more of a conversational feel. You might think about how you personally feel about some of the questions too. And that, I'm sure we could have a very interesting discussion with all of you. Thank you, really enjoyed the presentation.
I echo my fellow judges. I also really enjoyed your conversation of the debates over the idea of standing military and that use of many of the different Federalist Papers, and then the mention of the Anti-Federalist paper as well. I also thought that you brought in lots of great evidence. I would say when it comes to the follow-up questions, you guys have so much you want to say that you just need to take a minute, think about what the essence of the question is, and then really start out maybe with just an answering of that question as part of your question. And so where I saw this was like maybe that idea of the selective service question, where just the idea of kind of repeating that question back with your answer and then using all those great examples that you have. And I think that would also help create that conversational tone to it. But I think you guys did really, really well. And I really enjoyed your approach to the question and how you worked together.
So with that, thank you very, very much for spending your, well, at least on the West Coast still, morning with us. And good luck the rest of the day. It's been a pleasure hearing your testimony today. And you are free to go.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Judges.
Thank you.
Judges.
Great job, everybody.